What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of After the Whistle. We're going to be talking about All-Star starters, and the NBA released their voting, like you can start voting on Christmas Day. So it's been a couple days, and we're going to be doing our picks. So starting off with the Eastern Conference guard spot, there are two of them. Who do you have in one of your Eastern Conference guard spots?
So my first Eastern Conference guard is James Harden. That's who my first one is. So James Harden averaging 22, 9, and 8. And at the start of the season, he really wasn't doing too good. I mean, he was still adjusting to the new foul rules. But since then, he's just been playing so good. He's like one of the main reasons that the Nets are second in the East right now. And I don't know, I just feel like he's been so important to that team. I know you could say maybe Zach LaVine, Trae Young for one of that parts, but I really think James Harden has been better. And
All
I know,
right.
yeah, that's kind of why, yeah.
Yeah. I think he hasn't been as good or dominant as we've seen in the past, and I think while he's been good, he's definitely going to get a reserve spot. I personally don't have him starting. I actually have Trae Young over him, and Trae Young's numbers look better as for points, and he has a good number of assists, like pretty much equal to Harden. But his team isn't doing as good. But that's not even Trae Young's fault. Clint Capella hasn't been bringing his high energy to the Hawks this year. DeAndre Hunter has been out. Bogdanovich just came back from an injury. Cam Reddish has been good. Cam Reddish, same thing with John Collins. But some players who were good on the Hawks last year, or were good in general, just either diminished in production or have had injuries, like DeAndre Hunter, who is a defensive anchor for that team. So I still have Trey
Yeah.
because he's kept his like level of production up, but his team hasn't done as good, and he actually just entered health and safety protocols, so that's one of the reasons they lost to the Knicks on Christmas Day. What do you think about Trey?
In my opinion, Trae Young, he's been amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, but his team being in 10th place really has a lot of effect on my choice for James Harden. I feel like he could have led his team to a better record, but instead he's been not the greatest in clutch time. Say like not as good as last season in clutch time. I think if he had better shot selection in a few of the games, they could have won those. But I know it's really close between him and James Harden. But if we have to pick one, I would have to go for James Harden. Or no, not James Harden, Trae Young. I think
Uh-huh.
between those two, looking at it now, I just think Trae Young has been a little bit better than him. But I still think James Harden. If there was a third guard spot, I would have put him there. But I think Trae Young should be there as the first one.
And by the way,
Yeah.
we're both going to be presenting our viewpoints and then kind of agreeing on who. So I know you just talked about why you wanted Harden over Trey, but in the end, we kind of agreed on Trey. You know what I mean? So we chose Trey.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. So who's your second man?
I mean, this is kind of dumb by the NBA, but
Yeah.
they have Demar Derozan listed as a guard. And I personally think he's a forward. He played some power forward in San Antonio. Now he's playing some small forward in Chicago. So I don't really know why they have him at guard. But DeMar DeRozan, he for me right now is a top 5 MVP candidate. I mean, just look at his stats. He's rejuvenated from what we remember as a good explosive scorer in Toronto. And I think he has the advantage over Zach LaVine because first off, everybody's been seeing what DeMar DeRozan has been doing. Like he kind of was in a not diminished, but like away from the national lights or the bright lights in San Antonio, and you come to this big city in Chicago, and you just score, and you're super clutch, and you're the old DeMar DeRozan everybody knows and loves, compared to Zach LaVine, who everybody has already seen score on previous bad Bulls teams. Now he's still doing it on a good Bulls team, but I feel like that's why DeMar DeRozan gets my vote, and he's going to get other people's vote. And as a Raptors fan, you know I have to have some sort of bias here, but I personally do got DeMar. If he was a front court player, I would pick him, and Zach. So
Um, yeah. I mean, yeah. Even if you could say Raptors bias, but even without it, I think DeMar DeRozan easily should be in the All Star starting lineup. I mean, He's been a top 5 MVP candidate this year. Just look at his numbers: 27, 4, and 5. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he's been so great in the clutch, and even with Zach LaVine with him, I think they both of them together have performed a lot better than people would have thought at the start of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And they both are averaging similar numbers, but I think DeRozan's having a little bit more of an impact. But if there was a fourth guard spot, I guess, because James Harden would take the third one, I would put Zach LaVine there.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, DeRozan ideally should be in the front court, but he's
yeah,
a guard, so let's leave it at that.
hmm yeah. So now we go on to the Western Conference guards, and who's your first one?
Obviously, Steph Curry. I mean,
Yeah,
broke the 3-point record yesterday, hit 3,000 threes. He's in the MVP conversation. This one's a no-brainer. Just, I mean, yeah, Steph Curry.
yeah, yeah. Same. I think it's Steph Curry easily for me. Top three MVP candidate.
Yeah, I would say
But
top three too.
I think his efficiency, it's been down since he hit that record 3-pointers, I think.
Yeah,
And
or ever
but
since he's going for it. But yeah.
yeah, I think he's gone a little bit distracted by that record, but he can easily get back from that. So
Mhm. And the
I wouldn't be.
Warriors, yeah, and the Warriors
Yeah,
are a top
they're
team.
doing so good.
Yeah,
He even without Klay Thompson, I can't imagine how scary they'll be when they have Curry, Klay, Draymond, Wiseman, and whoever they would put as small forward. No, Wiggins. Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's a very
Right now they're the best team in the NBA, and he's obviously the reason behind it. Steph Curry is our
yeah.
obvious number one guard spot. So my second guard spot, this is where you could go a different like route. I mean, there's obviously I personally am not like I'm gonna rule out Dame. I think I love Dame, but I feel like this year he isn't. He has been doing better recently, but he isn't good enough for a starter spot. So
Yeah.
for me, and I personally also think Luka isn't gonna be a starter this year,
hmm
and so I think this one's gonna be between Donovan Mitchell, John Morant, and Devin Booker. And John Morant and Devin Booker were both injured for some time,
Yeah.
but Donovan Mitchell, like those three teams are the 2, 3, 4 right now in the Western Conference. Obviously, the Suns in 2, the Jazz in 3, and the Grizzlies in 4. And I mean, the Grizzlies are way ahead of schedule. If you ask me, like they weren't
Yeah.
supposed to like be the 4 seed this year. That's like we were thinking maybe uh made like 6 or 7 seed, like you know how they snuck into the playoffs last year, similar to that, but
Yeah. From the
they're
playing tournament.
mhm. And John Morant has really elevated his game. While his stats may not be there, his team did do really good when he was injured. But besides the point, John Morant has been really great. Um, and I personally think this one goes to John Morant, even if he doesn't have the best team or the best stats. He's just way ahead of his schedule, and his team is also way ahead of their schedule. Like we knew the Suns and the Jazz were going to be a top like 3, 4 seed coming into the season. The Grizzlies, no, we didn't think that at all. So that's why I have Ja starting over Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker. But I can personally agree if you want to put Mitchell or Booker over Ja. You?
Yeah. So actually, neither Donovan Mitchell, John Morant, or Devin Booker are my first position, are my guard that I'm picking. I think Donovan Mitchell. Yeah, but talking about your conversation, I think Donovan Mitchell should be ahead of John Morant because look at where he's led his team to, second place in the West. I mean,
Oh, well, third, but yeah.
third place in the West, third place in the West. But I don't know. Look, he's been so efficient this year. I not really shooting efficient, but I would say leading his team. He's been an amazing leader with Gobert, and yeah, I think he's really important to the Jazz's playoff or title hopes that they have for this season. But who I'm picking as my guard is actually where is he at? Bro, where's he at? Can I find him? Well, yeah, my pick would be Chris Paul,
Uh-huh.
and I mean he's been so good this year. I mean he's a top 10 MVP candidate as well. In my opinion, he's such a great leader for the Suns. With Devin Booker out, people were saying, "Oh, the Suns are gonna fall off now. They're not gonna be that good." he's one of the main reasons that the Suns have kept their second place spot in the Western Conference right now. And I think he's been going so under the radar. He really needs to have a bigger shout to be an all-star starting guard this season. Yeah.
I mean, personally, when you see that
His
15
numbers,
points,
yeah, his
yeah,
numbers may not show that he deserves it, but his leadership and how he's got them to the second place right now. He's gotten like almost everybody involved on the Suns. With Devin Booker out, I think Landry Shamet was there. He made Landry Shamet look so good.
yeah, but
If he's on a team, you're guaranteed to basically get into the playoffs. If Chris Paul is on your team, you have a really good chance.
yeah, I mean, all that is great for, I would say, the MVP conversation. Obviously, the Suns won like, what, 15, 17 games in a row, I'm pretty sure, at one point this year. But Chris Paul, the 15 points per game doesn't jump off the page. I mean, there's so many guys who could do that. The 10 assists is great, but I personally think Chris Paul is good to be an All-Star reserve, but he's also going to be in the MVP conversation, but he's not an All-Star, if you know what I mean. Like, the stuff he does
Uh,
is more of an MVP type thing than an All-Star type thing. And I mean, when you think about it from a fan's perspective, they're not going to vote him in when they're looking at this and he's not like in the first four rows. Like people are going to not really notice that. You know what I mean? They're going to see these top 8 guys and pick one of them. They'll pick 2 or 3 of them. So
yeah, but that's a pretty good argument. I think John Morant. Yeah, I would agree that John Morant should go over Chris Paul, but I still think Donovan Mitchell should get that spot.
yeah, I think I personally would put Ja there because of expectations, but I see where you're going with Mitchell, and we can definitely agree there. So yeah, Donovan Mitchell
Yeah, I'll put Donovan
gets
Mitchell. Yeah.
our combined second spot.
Yeah. So now you can start off with one of your Eastern Conference front court players.
I mean, the 2 of them are pretty
I think,
obvious, and then the third one is
yeah,
a
I think
bit
all
of a
three.
debate.
Yeah.
But Kevin Durant, top 3 MVP candidate. Um, he's like what 30 points per game. He's scoring crazy. One of the reasons the Nets are one of the better teams, best teams in the league. This one's obvious. Same thing with Giannis.
I
He's
think KD, Giannis. Yeah, I would agree with KD and Giannis, but
pretty obvious. This,
people would argue between Jimmy Butler and Joel Embiid and Jason Tatum. I think those are the 3 people that most people would argue between, but I think it should go to Joel Embiid. He's been so good in the past 2 months. He started off the season not great, but since then he's been really good.
and if you look at the team record, I mean Jimmy Butler, he's been injured for a while, so I personally would take him out of that running. So I think it's more of
Yeah.
a race between Joel Embiid and Jason Tatum. And when you look at the standings, that's where like the Sixers are currently the 6th seed and the Celtics are currently the 9th seed, but they're like what 2 games, a difference of 2 games. So right now, standings, you can't put standings into this, but it's a 76ers team that's Ben Simmons-less. Like there's no Ben Simmons. He's led that team. He's a great leader. I mean, I don't know if you watched it, but his post game conference last night with Tyrese Maxey. I mean, he just straight up told Tyrese Maxey he didn't have a great game. And
Yeah,
one thing,
he did. He got me like 10 fantasy points. He was terrible. But yeah, we move.
and then one thing which shows his or leadership or like how he commands a team is that Tyrese Maxey, knowing Joel Embiid, they're great teammates together. Obviously, he's like, yeah, I was bad today. He laughed it off, and that's what a great leader does. He like tells players when they're bad or not. And this Sixers team, I mean, they need Joel Embiid more than Jason Tatum, who has been inefficient some at times. So I personally think this one goes to Joel Embiid, and
Yeah, so
rather than Jason Tatum.
yeah, I think Jason Tatum, he needs to get his teammates involved a lot more.
Same thing with
I
Jalen
mean,
Brown. We can talk
it's
about this.
basically the Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown show. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a Boston Celtics, a really good team, probably the most prolific team ever, I would say. debatable with the Lakers, but
Yeah.
I think him and Jaylen Brown need to pass the ball a lot more if they have better hopes in the playoffs.
Yeah, we could
So yeah,
definitely
I would
talk
agree.
about that. Yeah, we could definitely talk about that more. But yeah, the Celtics, Jason Tatum, John Brown, they're not looking too great. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's go on to our Western Conference front court picks.
Okay. So who's your first person?
Nikola Jokic. I mean, if you
Yeah.
haven't seen his numbers, they've been crazy. He had a stat line the other day: 20 plus points, 20 plus rebounds, 8 assists, couple blocks. I mean, if you just he's averaging 14 rebounds. His defensive numbers, his advanced stats show that he's actually one of the better defensive players this year. And that's something we never really thought of when you think of Nikola Jokic. You think of good scorer, great passer, great facilitator of your offense, but you never think great defender. And that's one thing he's been this year, and his underlying numbers show that Nikola Jokic's season that he's having right now is one of the best ever in NBA history, and people
Yeah.
are not even talking about it. So Nikola Jokic, I mean, there is no argument, not a single argument that he is, in my opinion, top three in the MVP conversation. I've said that about Steph and Durant, but really Nikola Jokic won it last year. People didn't care. He's doing even better this year. And when Jamal Murray comes back, I feel like the Nuggets are going to be underdogs, and if they sneak in the playoffs, and they can make a run. I think when Jamal Murray comes back.
Yeah. I mean, it's no question. I agree with every single thing you said. Nikola Jokic should easily be in there, as well as LeBron
Yeah,
James. I
he's
mean,
pretty
LeBron has
much.
been so good, so good. I mean, in the past six games, even though the Lakers were like 1-5 in those 6 games, LeBron still averaged like something like 35 points per game
Mhm.
and like eight assists, 8 rebounds, or something like that. I
Yeah,
mean, as a 37-year-old, remember that he's a 37-year-old playing so
exactly.
well.
And
Yeah, I think both of those are locks. You can't take them out.
yeah, LeBron
And
just.
but the third one is something that people can debate on.
Mhm.
I
And
think.
more about LeBron. He joined the 36K points club last night, and he's just been so good for the Lakers. But Anthony Davis is out. Russell Westbrook hasn't been playing great, and Russell Westbrook is actually one of my favorite players, and he hasn't been good. I'll admit it as a Russell
Yeah,
Westbrook
I think
fan.
he should step it up. He needs to step it up. His efficiency is not that
And
good.
his shot selection isn't
His
the best
shot
either.
selection as well. Mhm.
So yeah, LeBron's definitely here. This last one, in my opinion, is it's not going to be Anthony Davis because he's out for 3 or 4 months. The
Yeah,
Pelicans are doing
I
really
think
bad.
it's.
The Pelicans are doing
Who do
really
you think it is?
bad, so it's not Brandon Ingram. It's not Wiggins. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think he's All-Star starter caliber. Same thing with Porzingis. So this one's going
No,
to come down to Carl Anthony Towns and
and Paul
Paul
George.
George. I don't know if you guys saw the reports, but Paul George is injured and he'll be reevaluated in 3 to 4 weeks. I made another video about that. If you want to see more details, go check that out. But I don't really know if he'll be ready for the All-Star game. So like this is really hard if they're both healthy. But let's say Paul George is hurt, obviously Carl Anthony Towns gets the spot. But assuming they're both healthy, let's talk about this because it's close when they're both healthy, obviously.
Who would you pick though? Between those two, who would you pick? I think it has to go to Paul George,
I
in
think
my opinion.
it goes to Paul George too. I mean, before his injury, he led a Clippers team without Kawhi Leonard to a top five, I think top five seed in the West. I'm pretty sure they were
Yeah,
5 or 6, something sitting around there. And then ever since this injury, they haven't been doing as good. But yeah, Paul George really came back after all those bubble stuff, pandemic P, all that stuff. But Paul George, he came back. He's been doing much better. I would put him over Carl Anthony Towns for the sole reason that he's leading a team, and Carl Anthony Towns' team has probably more star power. So that's like D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, and then a couple guys who are underrated are one of the McDaniels brother. I'm pretty sure it's Jalen, or I'm not sure which one is
yeah,
from Minnesota. I'm
yeah.
pretty sure
One of
it's
those and Jared Vanderbilt.
and Jared Vanderbilt. Those guys are both great. defenders that not many people talk about. They've also been great for them. So I feel like the Clippers don't have as much talent as a whole team compared to the Timberwolves. While they are currently better in the rankings, I think Paul George gets his All-Star vote over Cat because Paul George
Yeah.
has been better overall on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think the Timberwolves, they're heading in the right direction, though. I mean, they have such a young team, but they're developing into something really good, in
Yeah,
my
we're
opinion.
talking we're talking about kind of like what the Grizzlies did. Their core of
Yeah.
their core of Ja Morant, Brandon Clark,
No, Jaren Jackson Jr.,
Jaren
Desmond
Jackson
Bain.
Jr., yeah,
Yeah.
um, Desmond Bain, bunch of guys. I'm just forgetting off the top of my head.
Yeah, so much good players. They have a lot of depth as well. And yeah, but sticking to the
Dylan
point, I think it's
Brooks,
Paul George. Yeah, yeah.
Kyle
But it would be
Anderson, yeah.
Paul George, Nikola Jokic, LeBron James. I think that's pretty straightforward. Yeah. So going over the both teams. So in the Eastern Conference, it's Trae Young, DeRozan, Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Joel Embiid. And then the Western Conference, Stephen Curry, Donovan Mitchell, Nikola Jokic, LeBron James, and Paul George. Yeah.
And we did give our own individual picks. But these were kind of more of our combined picks where we kind of like agreed. So
Mhm.
yeah, thank you guys for watching. Please go down and hit that subscribe button. If it's not gray already, turn it gray right now. And also click the notification bell so you don't miss another video. We'll be doing a bunch of videos similar to this one here. And go check out the podcast link in the bio. This is from episode 2. Episode 1 dropped last week, so go check that one out too. Thank you,
Yep.
bye, and we'll see you later.